The CompTIA A+ covers a whole bunch of Linux commands, and we've covered them all in a number of different episodes, but like any job, there's a few left over. So I'm going to call this Miscellaneous Linux commands, which is a better way of saying the last few commands that don't really have a home. So we're going to go through a number of commands that are unrelated, but they are very cool, and they're on the A+. So let's get started with one of the coolest, the famous grep command. In the world of Linux, you are constantly dealing with text files in one way or another. Most of the configuration of a Linux system is actually done through configuration files. Now, if you have some experience with more modern Linuxes, a lot of those graphical front ends that are being used are actually doing nothing more than editing text files for you. Equally, within the world of Linux, log files are king. You get log files for all kinds of stuff. They are generally almost always text files, and you find yourself having to go through them. Now again, there's graphical front-end stuff for this, but when you're at a command line and you need to work with big piles of text, grep is your best buddy in the whole world. Grep is a utility that is designed to search for text strings within big piles of text. For the moment, we'll just call them text files. So what I'm going to do right now is I've got a system over here with a log file from a RAID system, and this RAID system has been giving me all kinds of trouble. And what I want to do is use the grep tool to search for a particular phrase, the phrase error, to see if it will help me diagnose the problem. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So let me do an ls in here, and you can see there's a file called lsi_0317.log. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for the word error in that log file using grep. So to do that, I'm going to type grep. Then I'm going to type the search string I want it to look for. And then I type in the file that I want it to search on. So we go ahead and we hit enter. And yeah, let me warn you right now. There is no such thing as an easy to read text file anywhere in the Linux universe. The grep tool is very powerful in that it can help you find stuff, but all it does is help you find stuff. You will have to have enough skill set to be able to use these tools to be able to read them. But be that as it may, let's take a little quick look, and we can actually see that it has taken out every line in the text file that has the word error in it. And we can read through and see what these individual errors might be. Now again, I would have to have some type of reference to be able to read RAID error files to understand what this all means, but grep at least gets us started. But grep really doesn't stop just there. You can do a lot with grep. It's very, very powerful. So one really cool place on your Linux system is the var/log folder. Most of the logs that your system generates are stored there. So what I'm going to do, and this is going to make a mess and I don't care, we're going to do a search that says look for the word error in every file in the var/log. So let's watch that happen. Let me clear this so we can see where we're going. So this time I'm going to type grep, and I'm going to say -r, which means recursive, which means do everything in there. And this time I'm going to point it not to the directory that I'm in right now, but to a different folder. Now, if I hit enter here, blurp, we get a lot of stuff. And what we're actually looking at in this particular case is grep looks at every file, not just log files, any text file that's in that particular folder, and is going through and looking for the word error and putting it out in a big list. So a lot of times when you're working with grep, you find yourself doing something called pipes. And in that case you say, instead of the output just putting it out on a screen, take that output and put it into a file so I can look at it later. Grep is an incredibly powerful and useful tool. If you get into Linux at all, you will find yourself turning to it time and time again. This little bit that I've touched here is only the lightest of touches of the real power that you can do with grep. The ps command allows us to take a look at what processes are running on our system. Now, what I want to do in this particular episode is run the ps command in a number of different ways. Now, you've got to be careful because the ps command is very old. In fact, it is so old that you have to run it different ways depending on the heritage of the version of Linux that you're running. So we have what's known as, like, say, a long GNU version. We have the BSD version. And to make your life easy, we're going to run it in only one particular way. Most modern Linux systems will accept this. So if by some chance I show you some examples that don't work on your particular version of Linux, well, A, you're probably running a weird version of Linux, and then B, go ahead and run through the manual pages to see how to do it for yours. They're very similar, but not exactly the same. All right, so first of all, let's just run the PS command. So if we run it by itself, not a whole lot happens. And what it's showing us is just there are two particular processes that are running right now. So you can see bash, which is the actual shell that we're running here, and then the PS command. But I want to run PS so that I can see a lot more than that. So what we're going to be doing is running the very famous PS aux command, which basically shows all of the processes running for everybody. So we'll type PS AUX, and now we can see all of the processes that are running on this system for every single user, including the system itself. So if you want to see everything running, PS aux is the typical way to do it. The problem with the output from PS aux is that it gets to be big, and you're looking for something. Like, say, for example, I'm running the popular Linux Evolution web browser, and I want to see which processes are running Evolution. Now, what's actually kind of cool here is that I can use the grep command to filter the output from PS aux and only show me what I'm interested in seeing. Let me show you how that works. I'm going to run PS aux, but in this particular case, I'm not just going to hit enter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create what's called a pipe. When you take a look here, I'm just typing a vertical line. Now the pipe says, look, instead of using the default output, which is the screen, I want you to do something else with it. So the PS aux command isn't just going to pop up on the screen. We're going to add another command, and it's going to filter through that, and that command's grep. So I'm going to type grep, and then what I'm looking for, and it's I can't spell evolution, so I'll just put EVOL in there. And hopefully, if I've done this right, what we're going to see is the output, and it's a little bit messy, but it is all here. You can see all the process IDs that have something to do with the evolution tool itself, and that way we can actually use a tool like grep to make our PS command a little bit more palatable to use. So that's actually pretty cool. If you want to see the processes that are running on your system, use the PS command. I don't think A+ is going to be challenging you on how to use the pipe functions to be able to pipe it through grep, but I think that's something you should know. Okay, ready for another miscellaneous command? The next one I want to take a look at is, if you need to know your IP address and your MAC address and all that stuff, those commands that we turn to are ifconfig and iwconfig. Let's take a look at those. The ifconfig and the iwconfig commands are designed to do one thing: give you information about your network connections. ifconfig is the more wired connection type thing, and iwconfig is for wireless. So on this particular system, I have a wired connection and I have a wireless connection. So let's run both of these so we can see the results. ifconfig is pretty straightforward. You type ifconfig and you hit enter. Now, if you take a look right here, this is my hardware connection right here. So I can see what my IP address is, I can see what my network is, I can see that I'm on IPv6, I can even see my MAC address. So when you need basic information about your system, you run ifconfig. Now I want you to take a look at something else here. So LO is just loopback, and that's just our loopback address, 127.0.0.1. But you can also see my wireless here. So ifconfig on this particular system shows both my wired and my wireless connections. However, if you want real detail on your wireless connections, you type iwconfig. So when I type iwconfig, it's going to give me a little bit more detail in terms of the actual wireless connection. So as you take a look here, I can see what my transfer rate is currently set up as. I can see what band I'm on. I can see my relative link quality that my network card thinks it has. So it gives me a lot of information about the actual wireless connection itself. you'll notice in here that it doesn't give me the IP address for my wireless NIC. If I need the IP address or the MAC address for my wireless NIC, I still have to run ifconfig. If I need details about the wireless network itself, I run iwconfig. So don't let the fact that the wireless NIC shows up twice confuse you on that particular issue. Okay, well, let's keep moving along in the world of miscellaneous Linux commands, and let's take a look at one of the commands that literally changed my Linux experience overnight, apt-get. Back in the 1990s, when I first started using Linux, one of the big pains was the actual process of getting an application installed on your Linux system. In the old days, we were reduced to doing things like, for example, we would actually have to compile the programs on our systems, and then we would have to, well, heaven forbid we had any dependencies where this executable needed other files. We'd have to download those. If there were configuration files, we'd have to set those up, and oh my goodness, it needed a particular font or a particular resolution or whatever it might be. The early days of grabbing applications, installing, configuring them, and making them work on individual Linux systems was really, really painful. Now, luckily, years ago, recognizing this problem, we began to get the idea of what I'm going to call packages. A package is an application, often precompiled, that has all the dependency files that it needs, that comes down with it, most, if not all, the configuration preset. And then what you could do is, if you knew where to find it, you could go to this any particular repository and download this thing and go ahead and go through some installation process. And it used to be in the old days it was an install, and it would go through this process for you. And that made life a lot better. But what really took it to the next step is where we start getting into the idea of package management. With package management, what you do is you can go to a command line and you type in a command, and it will go out into the world, find whatever application you want. Now, you have to know the name of the application. That's the one thing that's still something of an issue within the Linux world. But it will go out into the world, find the application for you, find the repository that has it, bring the package down, install the package, do the configuration, and you don't have to do much of anything. Now, there are different package management tools out there depending on the type of Linux you're using. What's very interesting is that the CompTIA A+ directly references a particular package management tool called apt-get. Apt-get is used on Debian-based systems. So if you're using Ubuntu, for example, that's Debian-based. If you're using Raspberry Pis, pretty much all of the tools that Raspberry Pis use in terms of Linux are Debian-based. So that's actually a little bit of a clue for you in that what is CompTIA looking at in terms of Linux, and by telling you the apt-get command, they're kind of telling you that they're looking at Debian systems. So that pretty much tells me if I'm going to be practicing Linux for the CompTIA A+, I'm going to be using probably Ubuntu on a desktop, or if I'm trying to save money, grab a little Raspberry Pi, get a copy of Raspbian Linux, and I can run that way too. Okay, but that's a sidebar, don't want to get too far off. So what we're going to do now is we're going to run the apt-get command. So the apt-get command is a very, very powerful tool that allows us to install programs. Download, locate, download, install, upgrade. It's like a one-stop shop. Before I show you this command, I need to mention one thing, and that is built into my Linux system is a cache that knows where to get and how to download every application. Well, people have to join this thing that you can get for Linux. So it's a big cache file. So before I grab a program, I'm going to grab a really cool program called htop, but before I do that, I need to make sure that my local cache is up to date. So our first apt-get command isn't to install a program, it's to make sure our cache is up to speed. Let's run it. Yep, gotta have sudo. And all I'm going to do is run update. And what that's doing right now is it's going through my cache and making sure that my cache is up to date and reflective of the programs that are available. Now, in this particular system, mainly because there's almost nothing on it, it runs very, very quickly. On your system with a lot of applications installed, this could take a while. Now, that's the first thing I want to do. Now, the next thing I want to do is run apt-get upgrade. Apt-get upgrade allows me to upgrade installed programs on my system. So this time I'm going to run sudo apt-get upgrade. Now, this one ran very, very quickly, and the reason it ran very quickly is because I just ran it before, because this can take a long, long time, and it went out there and made sure that all of my packages are completely up to date. Okay, now it's time to install a new program. Now, the program I'm going to install is called htop. It's a cool little program. It's not on the A+, but it's one of the programs I turn to a lot, so I thought it'd be fun to show it to you. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, apt-get install htop, just like that. Now, the neat part is he's going out on my internet connection. He went through the cache, found htop, knows where to go get it. It's downloading all the packages that I need. It's not only going to download them, but it's also going to install them, get it all configured, and all I'll need to do is run htop from a command prompt once this guy's done. Ta-da! Okay, so if I've done everything right, htop is now installed. So let's go ahead and run htop. Ta-da! What you're looking at here with htop is it's kind of like a PS, but it's more graphical-ish, and it updates in real time, so I don't have to keep typing PS to look at all my processes. It's a very, very cool little program. I recommend you try it on your own time. Well, that, folks, covers all of the miscellaneous Linux commands that you're going to be seeing on the A+. I can't stress again how lightly I've touched on every one of these commands, and if you really want to become a Linux person, and you should, take a look at every one of these commands. You can go a lot deeper.